Any patriotic Zambians should feel proud to access products and services that are locally produced. 54 years after independence, Zambia has made several strides in various sectors. However, government's pronouncement that ballot papers for the 2021 general elections might be printed locally at the government printers has sparked debate among several stakeholders. On today's edition of News in Depth, Macpherson Mukuka speaks to some of these stakeholders who have given their view on the matter. I'm your host, Masauso Mukwayaya. Stay tuned. In 1991, Zambia reverted to multi-party democracy. This came after 27 years of what Dr. Kenneth Kaunda called one-party participatory democracy. A multi-party democracy only existed the first 3 years after the country's independence. The country, however, returned to plural politics in 1991, following immense pressure from local stakeholders and the international community.
I'm going to sign the bills that are going to change the political character of the nation from one-party participatory democracy once again to multi-party democracy.
General elections were held in October that year. Dr. Kaunda was defeated by Frederick Chiluba of the Movement for Multi-Party Democracy, MMD, in the presidential elections, with Dr. Chiluba sweeping to victory with 76% of the vote. Since then, Zambian elections have been held under a multi-party democratic system. Presidential and parliamentary elections are held simultaneously every 5 years from the last election. The system provides for a two-term mandate of 5 years each for the head of state, subject to re-election. The constitution, however, does not provide for a limit on parliamentarians, as they can contest any parliamentary seat. Local government councillors also enjoy limitless participation in civic elections. At the center of all this is a coordinated electoral system managed by the Electoral Commission of Zambia, ECZ.
It's a cycle. You have the nominations that take place. That is really like the last bit. We're looking at the next 5 years. We are beginning, building the processes, putting in place what we need, building capacity, training all the support staff, putting in place all the logistics to make sure that the elections are run in a more efficient manner. So I think it's a cycle, it's a process. It's a 5-year cycle. So it begins when the other elections end, and we begin to look at looking at resources.
From time immemorial, one of the most critical parts in the electoral process has been centered on modalities used to arrive at a decision of who and where ballot papers are printed. A ballot paper is a document used in an election as a medium where electorates indicate who they are voting for. In the Zambian context, this is done by way of marking a cross or the letter X across the two diagonal ends of the rectangle-shaped box that is placed on the right side of a preferred candidate. Names and symbols of candidates and their political parties are placed on the left side of the document. A ballot paper is affixed with state-of-the-art security features. This is meant to guarantee the highest levels of authenticity and to rule out any possibilities of forgery during an election. The Electoral Commission of Zambia underscores the criteria used in the selection of the printer.
It is important to note that because ballot papers are very sensitive and they are, security documents, it's like you're printing money. The printer would have to put in place security features on the printing and ensure that the premises is secure. You also need to know the number of ballot papers that will be printed, and also the audit trail is very important in this regard. Also, you want to look at whether they have the capacity to print a number of ballot papers. If you're looking at our general elections, you're looking at the presidential ballot, you're looking at the member of parliament, and also local government. And now you have chairpersons for the various councils in the districts. You want to ensure that there's security and whatever is printed will be accounted for. So what is important is for the printer to be able to meet all these specifications so that all the printed material and all the ballot papers meet all the specifications, particularly that it is a security document.
It is worth noting that ballot papers of 4 out of the 8 elections held in Zambia were printed locally at government printers. Government printers, a state-owned printing company, printed ballots in 1991, 1996, 2001, and 2006.
I can safely say challenges have emanated from the technological changes. Because when we were printing the ballot papers in 1991 and 96 and 2000 and 2006, so, and again, we were using monocolor kind of equipment during that kind of transformation of 1996, 2001, and 2006. And even those by-elections that took place after 2006, we were printing them using the monocolor.
The ballot papers printed at government printers were in black and white. However, before the 2008 presidential elections, which were necessitated by the death of then sitting President Levi Mwanawasa, the Southern African Development Community SADC had made a directive over the elections in the region. The directive was for all member states hosting elections to have ballot papers printed in full color ink. This automatically ruled out government printers as it did not meet that particular SADC requirement. And since then, the Electoral Commission of Zambia has had to outsource the printer of ballot papers, mainly from Dubai and South Africa. Notwithstanding this demand, government has been making efforts to have government printers resuscitated so that it is able to print ballot papers that meet the SADC requirements. A few years ago, government announced its intentions to revive government printers, but very little progress was made beyond the announcement.
A technical committee which was engaged by Secretary to Cabinet in 2013 made recommendations of various equipment that we need to procure in order for us to participate in the printing of the ballot papers. That is the more reason why even the previous election of the 2016, we had to bid with the Electoral Commission of Zambia. But we lost on one principle, the principle of security certification. Because we didn't know that there was need for security certification. So in that aspect, we lost the business. There is an international standard organization, if you have heard of ISO certification. Yes. They focus their certification on human resource. They focus their certification on equipment and infrastructure. If these 3 certificates you do not have, you cannot handle security documents.
From the look of things, government did not forget about its intentions of bringing back the printing company. During his recent visit to Rwanda, President Edgar Lungu indicated that ballot papers were going to be printed in Zambia. He revealed that the state printing institution will receive a new lease of life. And just as indicated, the company is receiving a boost. So far, 43 million kwacha out of the initial budget of 50 million kwacha has been spent on the purchasing and installation of various machines, which among others include one ballot paper printing machine.
The levels of confidence in our ability to do things is elevated. we're now a lot more sure that we can do the job. The dispatch of resources from Treasury is much more assured. And the levels of human resource, both from a technical and professional perspective, has also been elevated. So that is a critical environment that should create a platform to be able to assure even those that may be bearing some doubts that we have perhaps the most ideal environment now to undertake this exercise.
And Government Printers Chief Executive Officer Charles Zimba says the investment in the printing department has come in handy. He said most of the machinery has been procured and installed, but the institution will still need more.
According to the requirements of ECZ, at least you need at least 2 machines or 3 to be on the safe side. So we are intending to top up with the other procurements. Because you see, it can be funny. You are printing and then all of a sudden, technology is failing you. So you need to quickly transform to the next one. So it's very important that we need backups.
Stakeholders in the electoral process have most received the announcement of printing ballot papers locally with mixed feelings. The opposition movement for multi-party democracy, MMD, and the ruling Patriotic Front Party have welcomed the call.
The thought of having ballot papers printed locally is supported. We have countries that conduct elections and they print ballot papers within that particular country. What are some of the lessons we can learn from them? Those are the issues we're supposed to be discussing. And we still have time. This is 2018. By 2021, if there's seriousness on the part of government, there's seriousness on the part of all stakeholders, we would be able to put all the necessary measures required to have government printers have capacity to build, to be able to undertake such an assignment.
First and foremost, I want to say that as a party in government, we are in support of the decision that government has taken, that the ballot papers should be printed within our own country. That is government printers.
Other stakeholders, among them the Southern African Center for the Constructive Resolution of Dispute, SACOD, and Transparency International, Zambia, TIZ, have equally endorsed the decision.
Previously or in the past, the printing of ballot papers internationally has brought a lot of acrimony, tension and conflict in the country, largely on suspicion that such a process could have been prone to potential manipulation and ultimately led to the results not reflecting the wishes as well as the desires of the people of Zambia. Therefore, as SACOD, we believe that in an effort to get rid of such conflicts, to get rid of such perceptions, there is probably a need for us to try a new approach of showing that we can be in charge of our own democratic and electoral process by printing ballot papers locally.
To us, it is a welcome idea. We appreciate the apprehension by other, other segments of the Zambian population, and that is because a lot of money has been pumped before into government printers, and they couldn't manage to print the ballot papers. It should have been in 2015. I think we heard that they bought 2 very big machines which were not working, and people were really quite upset with that. I mean, how do you put in money like that and then something doesn't work? So we really hope that this time around government is going to do its due diligence. They are going to make sure that their investment is actually working and it is working for the Zambian people.
Meanwhile, the opposition United Party for National Development, UPND, has questioned the legality and transparency in the decision.
We want the process to be transparent. Let them invite a tender and let a number of organizations bid, or companies or whatever, printing companies, let them bid. an international tender. Government printer can be one of those who can put a tender, and then they'll be subjected to, if my suggestion, my proposal to say all stakeholders come, they'll look at it, they'll listen to them, they'll hear, and people will raise concerns here and there. If at the end of the day they find that yes, government printer is the best, then the decision will be made by all stakeholders.
If there is a role that the Electoral Commission of Zambia needs to play in this particular regard, from our point of view, is that you do have the government that has agreed that ballot papers should be printed locally. The Electoral Commission of Zambia must therefore become proactive in terms of engaging government printers and start inviting stakeholders to the table on exactly what is to be done.
Zambia's election house adds flesh to the bone to provide an answer to the concerns raised by UPND.
We will do what is required by the law, and we will let whoever is the best printer print the ballot papers. And going forward, I think we need to engage further with other stakeholders to see what is best for the country. We understand there are other players in this in this cycle, and sometimes also government looking at issues of saving money. Maybe that is also something to put on the table.
When ballot papers are printed abroad, various stakeholders in the electoral process send representatives to monitor the printing process. Political scientist Chris Zimba and TIZ Executive Director Wesley Chibamba are positive that printing ballot papers locally will enable more stakeholders to monitor the process.
If they were to be done locally, it simply means that many players, meaning in this case political parties, election observers, civil society organizations, can participate in monitoring the printing of ballot papers, because it is within. People can easily go there and observe. People will not raise issues of accommodation, food, and other costs which come with that.
To sort of push away the speculations that always surround the printing of ballot papers when they have to be printed from outside, in South Africa or Dubai, for instance. I mean, a lot of insinuations, where people think they'll be pre-rigged or whatever.
Mr. Zimba, however, feels that government should, as soon as possible, together with ECZ, start consultations with other stakeholders in order to eliminate any form of doubt.
I believe that there is need to ensure that there is stakeholder involvement, stakeholder in consultation, and there is also stakeholder buy-in and validation, so that as we talk about printing the ballot papers locally, the key players, the political parties, they need to okay the decision. They need to have their answers and their concerns clarified by ECZ and the government.
But UPND Deputy Secretary General Mwambwa Imenda insists that government should engage stakeholders before making a decision of who should print the ballot papers.
Printing ballot papers is a very important exercise, and it is an exercise that should ensure that all stakeholders are involved in the decision. The decision where to print and so on should not just be left to the Electoral Commission of Zambia alone or to the government alone, because there are a lot of stakeholders. So stakeholders, including the political parties, including the United Party for National Development, being the largest opposition party in the country.
And PF Secretary General Davis Mwila wonders where ballot papers should be printed next.
You remember that government ECZ printed ballot papers outside from 2006 up to 2016. All these elections that have been conducted, government or ECZ have been printing ballot papers outside. And there was that outcry from the opposition that elections will be rigged. So what has changed today? Because we want to use our own institutions to print the ballot papers, we have to trust our own institutions. So what we are saying is that let them understand that we have to reduce money, we have to trust these institutions. It ends there.
MMD National Secretary Raphael Nakachinda shares the same concern with Mr. Mwila.
It's surprising that now that there's a sentiment from government that 2021 ballot paper should be printed in Zambia, that has generated negative sentiments. So it means that it looks like as politicians we have just got an attitude that everything said or done must be condemned without putting it into proper perspective.
Government is aware of the concerns raised by various stakeholders over its decision to print ballot papers locally using government printers.
We're going to have constructive engagement with the stakeholders to assist that they make informed decisions. This is a collective responsibility for all of us Zambians, that we should not doubt our capabilities and capacity to be able to do an act such as printing ballot papers. We have done many great things as a country, including having free and fair elections historically. How can we fail on just printing ballot papers? So yes, building confidence, building trust is a critical component of this overall exercise. And that is why we're going to engage with them, including them being present at the point of testing, the equipment, the technology, and the output that we're going to do.
The Electoral Commission of Zambia, too, has its own way of engaging stakeholders before and during and after elections.
You see, the ECZ is more or less like a referee. We are not the players. So we listen to everybody. So we've been listening to what all the other players are saying, and we'll welcome all opinions. And we want everybody to be included in this process. But we'll do what is the best for the country, whether it's printing locally, which we would love to see if all the requirements are met.
Interestingly, allegations of rigging elections are not new in Zambia. However, one wonders why they are so common when it is time to select a printer for ballot papers.
It is us politicians that usually are pessimistic about the processes of identifying who should print ballot papers. Mind you, we have an ECZ conflict management committee to which political parties with representation in parliament and even those that do not have representation in parliament belong. And all these matters are deliberated, including the bidding process. But after we participate in the process, usually we go on an anthill and begin to condemn the process to which we were part of, or in the bid of wanting to generate propaganda against ECZ because we think it will extend to the ruling party. I think that attitude must come to an end.
But for political scientist Chris Zimba and SACOD Executive Director Boniface Chembe, speculations about rigging have become part of the Zambian political playing field.
Political trust has to be number one, and that can only come if there's comprehensive engagement, consultation, and validation amongst themselves. It shouldn't be an issue of saying, is their ballot papers or is our ballot papers? These are ballot papers for the Zambian voters and the Zambian citizens.
We should not focus on allegations or perceptions of rigging and or not rigging. It has become part of our culture. What we must do and expend as much energy as possible on is on addressing any concern that any stakeholder has to its logical conclusion. If we do that, we believe that the result should be a foregone conclusion.
TIZ, on the other hand, feels the electoral process is losing credibility because of failure by politicians to respect and follow the Electoral Code of Conduct.
Whenever there is a breach of the Electoral Process Act, this is a very, very serious issue that should be taken with the seriousness that it deserves. But then we see a lot of abuse of the court system where someone wants to appeal and they want to do this and that. You know, we really need to be serious about enforcement of the laws that we put in this country.
The cost associated with printing ballot papers are immense, and footing the bill is always on government's side. The Electoral Commission of Zambia shares some of the procurement costs that arise from the printing of ballot papers abroad.
The last elections, What was spent was 3.5 million US dollars. And of that, for the printing, it cost 3 million just for the ballots, and the others was for the taking all the stakeholders along.
Meanwhile, Minister of Works and Supply indicated that printing ballot papers locally will save money, and SACOD, TIZ and Chris Zimba are also cognizant of the fact that printing ballot papers locally will save money.
We believe that the printing of ballot papers locally may contribute immensely to reducing the costs that have come along with the printing of ballot papers internationally.
The stakeholders have been calling for government and ECZ to put up modalities and mechanisms to ensure that at some point we begin to continue print ballot papers locally, because it will be cheaper and cost effective.
Coupled with the issue of saving money, we want to believe that this would be more sustainable than Zambia having to go and outsource every time that we have an election.
Now, the decision to print locally, under normal circumstances, it would have been okay. But we have problems. Government printers, do they have the capacity to print to undertake such a big exercise? Can they maintain the secrecy?
Mr. Mtati has urged the stakeholders to have faith in government printers.
There comes a time that you need to depend on your own resource. And this is the time. And we're going to show you that we're more than capable to deliver ballot papers with full integrity, including appropriate levels of security.
While the debate may seem not to end anytime soon, some stakeholders are optimistic that a consensus will be reached sooner than later.
It's good that the debate is beginning early so that we can go over this process. But everybody has to have a buy-in, all the stakeholders, government and everybody else. And it's good that government is coming on board to recapitalize government printers, because it is important.
This process, I think, is a very fragile one. It's a very delicate one. At the same time, it's crucial and important for Zambia. So stakeholders' involvement, consultation and validation, to me, I think is number one.
The PF and MMD feel the politicians must examine their sentiments on electoral matters and put the interests of Zambians first.
The NGOs have to come out openly. They should not remain mute. The non-governmental organizations and the Law Association of Zambia, they have to come out and talk about this issue.
Let's examine the sentiments that we are subjected to. Let's examine the actions that the politicians are undertaking, and see whether they mean well or is basically out of a selfish, narrow agenda.
And UPND maintains it wants to be involved at every stage of the electoral process.
The process that I want is let us have as many as possible, and then at that decision-making point to decide who to pick, we should be involved. If there were mistakes in the past, we want to address those mistakes. And if there was a mistake of not calling stakeholders, we are saying this time, let's do things a bit better.
Meanwhile, Minister of Works and Supply, Felix Mtati, has invited every stakeholder to the table.
Unless you see the process in action, unless you are informed on the basis of fact, only then can you be able to create an opinion. But to create an opinion in the absence of fact is not the best way to go. The taste of the pudding is in the eating. Come and eat. Then you tell me.
The debate on the printing of ballot papers either locally or abroad has not started now. In the previous years, the arguments escalated beyond the election day. This is despite stakeholders having given a go-ahead to the decision to have ballot papers printed. And now a similar concern has surfaced with stakeholders calling for total involvement in the process, including selection of a printer. But what is clear is that government printers will only do the job upon meeting all the requirements set forward by ECZ.
This is where we come to the end of this week's edition of News in Depth, where Macpherson Mukuka was looking at views from stakeholders regarding the proposal to print ballot papers for the 2021 general elections using the government printers. Next week, join me as I look at various measures that have been put in place to enhance road safety. I've been your host, Masauso Mukwayaya. Pleasant viewing.